Theme for the morning. The theme is negotiating the generational shift.
Shift.
John's got you.
Just went through He's gonna say.
Just the generations, but not the slides.
Younger generation doesn't.
There we go. He's
Shift the slide here.
We're considering how to navigate the time when aging parents and their adult children make decisions about how best to adjust to physical and mental decline. Now, examples, there's various dimensions of this: mobility, medical care, there are legal issues, residence, and that's only a partial list that comes up sometimes in these discussions. There are a number of Bible passages. Here's just a few. I was particularly attracted to the second one. Do not despise your mother when she is old. I think the one who wrote that proverb must have observed that some people were despising their mothers when they were old. And so he had to give us some wise counsel on that.
Father.
Well, that particular time, the proverb author was thinking of mothers. And I think the same advice would go to the father. What do you think, Jude? You don't know. Jude is agnostic on that one. Anyway, we will tell some stories about this, the way they've worked out in our families. And Bill and Phyllis Miller, and they have some adult children on Zoom, and they'll go back and forth on the two generational perspectives on these stories. And Vic and Marie will do the same thing with our children. Our daughter Rebecca and our son-in-law Kevin are here with us in the class. And then very important, we won't use all the time. We're going to invite the class to share. So if you have some stories, both of things that worked out well and of things that maybe didn't work out so well, so we learned from failure, we're going to be open to those stories to conclude our time together. So anyway, we want to, in terms of the purpose, that last sentence is a good summary. How do we negotiate sensitive issues in a way that both generations feel heard and feel respected? That's the goal. So we'll look into that with some stories. Bill, take it away.
Well, I'm hoping that our oldest son, Lee, and our youngest daughter, Karen, will be on. At least I understand they are. They are on. Okay. It happens that at Christmas time, our 4 children and their spouses were with us, not any grandchildren. And it gave us a really good time to talk about some of these things. And so we did spend part of an afternoon specifically talking about things that we should know for each other. Karen, our youngest, lives here in Goshen, and that's a wonderful, those of you that have at least one child here, I hope that you appreciate that kind of thing also. I believe now Bill is going to speak.
Well, as Phil said, our children are helping us. Karen is our principal power of attorney in the event that we can't function, and Lee is the backup. But realistically, Karen is more the general power of attorney, and Lee tends to do the medical things because he has access to both medical information and medical colleagues at Northwestern. And we've both gone through sort of medical crises recently, and he, of course, has been helpful in suggesting things. As far as what we have done in the past, when our 5th child was born, I think is about the time where we made out wills. And one of the main reasons for doing that was that if we would die, this was about the time we also started our international traveling, that there would be arrangements to take care of non-adult children. I suppose you've been advised many times that that's very important to have wills to take care of those contingencies. Some years ago, I prepared a list of all our financial and insurance and all that sort of thing, and outlined the details of those and put it in a file, which Karen knew where it was, so that again, in the event that we were no longer able to function, she would know where this information is. And about a year ago, no, it was a couple years ago, I guess, I made a list in which I outlined all of our financial information, so that again, they would know how to handle things if we're not around. We have not tried to hide details of our will or what our income is or what our expenses are. We've been very transparent with that. And I think that is important, particularly at our age. The other thing that's been helpful, where our children have pitched in, last summer, we had a family reunion in British Columbia. We had a large Airbnb, and our children really took care of the details of that sort of thing. In the past, we would have done that, but now they do it. We're anticipating a trip to Mexico in a couple weeks. As our Muslim friends would say, inshallah. Again, many of the details they're taking care of, and we say, well, we'll go by your judgment. So things have shifted considerably in that respect.
I think we'll have Karen speak next. She always, not always, at least once a month, has gone with us when we talk to our financial advisor. So she knows what's going on there. And I often go with her to the grocery store. And there are just so many ways that she is helpful. So, Karen?
Yeah, so I assume you can hear me?
I don't think we
No.
can hear you.
Soft.
Yeah. My audio is on from my end. How
You're
about
on.
now?
Good.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, I am the one kid in town, and happy to do things to help out mom and dad here and there. So I enjoy our often weekly shopping trip with mom to get groceries. One of the things that I love doing with dad is biking. And one of the things that we as children have worked on with dad as he is doing a lot of biking is trying to figure out ways to keep him safe. And so one of the things that maybe about 2 years ago, we encouraged him to get a helmet, which has a tracker on it so that mom can see where he is as he is out on the roads. And if he has a crash, then there is an alert that gets sent. So paying attention to some of those kinds of things. As I said, the Everence, I think often quarterly meetings or every other quarterly meetings or twice a year kind of meetings with them have been helpful to have a little bit more sense of their finance picture. And certainly appreciate the fact that they have been very open with us children about that. I would remind people that not only the importance of kind of letting kids know where finance things stand, but make sure one of your kids knows where your password list is so they can get into various accounts. On a lot of different levels, that's important. We ran into that when Dad was hospitalized recently, and brother Lee wanted to be able to get into his healthcare portal, and we just need to figure out those passwords. So that can be an important thing. I think about two things to mention that feel like real gifts to us as kids, as they're for kids. One is when they were transitioning at various points over the last 15 years, and especially as they transitioned to go to Greencroft 6 years ago, Mom and Dad did a really good job of going through their things so that was not a burden that us kids had to do. And I know that is not always something that older parents can do, but that is a real gift to children. I have a lot of peers that their parents are near the end of their life or at the point where they need to really downsize, and they haven't done any of that over the years. And it becomes a big task for children. So I would say that was one thing that felt like a gift to us as their kids. But I would say the biggest thing for me is the gift of open conversations. I think it was probably, I don't know, Mom, 15 years ago or something. There was a little paper that came out, I think through Mennonite Women, maybe, that was something that a parent could give to their adult child that said, please tell me when, there's a whole list of them, when I need to stop driving, if I have spots on my clothes, if I need help with money. And there was this list of things that then at the bottom, the adult parent could sign and give to their adult child to say, whenever you need to have this hard conversation with me, I'm giving you permission to do that. And that to me was really helpful and important to say, whenever that time comes, I have the permission to talk to them, even if those decisions are hard. So to me, that has probably been the biggest gift to not feel like we need to skirt around the issues, or just being able to lay things out there as much as possible. Yeah, and I would say the other thing, that modeling of being able to talk about things openly, that's not always easy. There are times when, for example, siblings might disagree on certain things, but I think just that invitation to continue to talk about things openly is really helpful. I'll just add one more thing having to do with Dad's comments about Lee being helpful on medical kinds of things. This is just a real practical thing that worked well for us. So like when Dad was in the hospital recently, I was there physically. I knew that Lee could better understand what was going on from a medical perspective. And so I just got him on the phone. When the attending doctor walked in the room, I made sure to call Lee on the phone so that Lee could be there. I could still hear, but Lee could also answer those questions. And then afterwards, both Lee and I could help Mom and Dad, understand, negotiate, that kind of thing. So that was just kind of a practical little thing that was helpful.
Thanks, Karen. I should say that the reason she's not here is because she and Phil are in Phoenix having their first grandchild was born last Sunday. So that's right.
Okay, I think Lee is on also, and I guess we'll have him speak next.
All right, I will do that. Dad and Karen have both anticipated things that I had in mind to say, and I'm going to start to see whether I can manage to share a picture here. Can you see a picture up on your screen there?
Yeah.
So this was 1969. Mom and Dad organized one of our summer outings. That's Karen in the lower left there. Her hair, I think, is kind of similar to what it is right now. We had a delightful summer on Pikes Peak, bar camp on Pikes Peak in the Rocky Mountains. And it was we had a number of summers together. This is, I think, my most memorable. And it really highlights for me how important the things that we did together as a family growing up were. And so, jump ahead 54 years almost to the week, I think. This was Mom and Dad's 90th birthday party that several of us organized, also in the Rocky Mountains. And you see Mom and Dad here, sort of dwarfed by one of their grandsons, John. Again, we had a wonderful time there in the mountains, but the organizational priorities and schemes had shifted a bit. And they also mentioned British Columbia. So this was just last summer. I don't have any pictures of the upcoming Mexico outing, but we're looking forward to that. And I think it's really important to have these kinds of family experiences. And as it becomes less feasible or less easy for our parents to make those kinds of arrangements for the growing clan, I am delighted to jump in and do those kinds of things. Karen referred to my role as a sort of medical interpreter. These days, there's a tremendous amount of medical information. There are lots of options, especially in big city medical centers like the one where I work and where we live. So understanding how to navigate the medical portals that are now available is difficult for any of us, I think. And perhaps for those who didn't grow up doing that kind of thing, it's even worse. So the opportunity not only to get on the phone with Karen and the various specialists that both Mom and Dad were dealing with, but also to access information through the portal and interpret it, I hope has been helpful to them. It's certainly been useful as an additional part of source of information for me. And more specifically than that, because I have connections here at Northwestern, I happen to know the chief of cardiology, who I went to when I was diagnosed with high blood pressure. And when Mom recently has had a cardiac issue, he said he'd be happy to bring her in as well. And likewise with Dad, I was able to contact specialists up here that have resources that are not readily available at Goshen and surrounding areas. So I've felt very good doing those kinds of things.
Would just add to that I really have to make a decision. How long do I keep in my life going like this with various medical things that are available? So that's something that I really have dealt with the last week or two. How much should I do that?
I was just going to add, Lee mentioned patient portals. I don't know how many of you use those, but I've found them to be very useful. And in case you don't realize it, your children can have access to your own patient portal, either by giving them your passwords, or I can also go to my portal and say, okay, Lee is authorized to look at my information on the patient portal. So it's really a good way of communicating.
Let me just also add, in addition to that kind of technical information and so forth and interpretation, I would echo Karen's comment about the openness of discussion, whether it's a highly technical discussion of cardiac stents or the roller coaster that Mom just described. Being willing and able to have those kinds of discussions is tremendously important, not only to Mom and Dad, but to each of us. Mom just mentioned that Karen has added to their great list of great grandchildren. We had one of our sons when their first son was born. He had what appeared to be some sort of medical issues, and it was tremendously difficult to navigate the ups and downs that they had as they would receive new bits of medical information and try to interpret them. So it's not exclusively related to nonagenarians. It's all of us need to be willing and able to have these kinds of discussions.
Okay, I think maybe we should give the Stolzfuses time to.
Our first story has to do with automobiles, and Becky will kick it off.
A couple of framing things as I listen and think about this conversation. One is that we love our parents very much, and so do the Miller kids love their parents very much. So the things that we're talking about fit well into sometimes the theme of dissonance, but they also fit into what does love look like when you try to put that in action, and it's not always clear. So and one other thing that strikes me is that Karen and Lee and the Millers, you should know that information travels in your family system, and then it travels in your friendship with Vic and Marie, and then it travels into our family system. So a couple of the stories that we're talking about with our parents have been informed. You're sort of a benchmark family for us. You know, like, well, what did the Miller kids do? And I've never had this conversation directly with Karen or Lee, but I hope, you know, take that as a compliment. So I'll talk about two sort of risk interventions that I'm one of three daughters. I'm the middle daughter that the Stoltzfus daughters tried. One, and they ended differently. So one was about, I'll just spend a moment on the pickleball intervention, which Dad didn't even know was brewing, but it was brewing. It's been brewing for a while, and an active conversation amongst the daughters about Dad's pickleball. And after he had a fairly recent heart event and led to weakness and a stent intervention in his heart, amongst the three of us, there was very active conversation about, okay, this is it, no more pickleball. You know, if he gets through this heart procedure, no more pickleball. Well, those of you who know my father know that that intervention never came to fruition. And it's because there are risks, but you know, living is risky, and living needs to be full of joy and social companionship and energy as well. And those of you who know my dad know that pickleball brings him a lot of joy. And I have conversations with Tavi at the Goshen Soccer Academy and says, your dad knows when not to go for a ball. And so anyhow, that was a conversation amongst daughters that never gained enough traction to become a real conversation. But the car, Mom and Dad were driving a older Camry. Camrys will run forever. They're great cars. This one had no safety features in it. And we were all really enjoying the safety features on our vehicles. And we were aware, I think, that Bill and Phyllis got a new car with safety features several years back out of a conversation with their children. And so that was a conversation that we did have with Mom and Dad. You should really get a new car. And that meant a lot of resistance because the car was fine. The Camry was fine. And it was the car that they loved and that they were used to. And we were... we persevered through that conversation, and they did purchase a beautiful new Camry that has a lot of safety features in it. And I would also observe that, you can speak to this too, but getting a new car with a lot of safety features and technology at your age can bring disorientation of its own. And we hadn't really realized that. So watching it all unfold, we were like, oh, wow, this is really not just easy for them to get all these safety features. This is a challenge. And so that was a learning for us as well. Kevin has another story to tell. Do you want to?
I'll just say with regard to the car, it took a while for me to be persuaded. But after the decision was made and we actually had $30,000 worth of a newer car, I came to like the newer car. But it took a while to come around and to feel real good about that. Okay, you had something on the car?
No, I'm gonna move on to the next one. But I wanted to echo the value of having children living in proximity to aging parents. We're fortunate that Becky said yes to Goshen College. And so now we get to live here in Goshen, and it's been a really good chapter for us to be here as Vic and Marie are moving into their 90s. And one of the values of that is that we can actually see how changes are happening. Like on the pickleball thing, we thought, well, let's just watch this a bit and see. And it looked okay. And we played pickleball with him sometimes and saw that he didn't go for every shot. So we thought, okay, we can let that go. If you're living at a distance, it's really hard to assess how much risk is there that's happening. And you don't always get it right, even if you're living in the same town. In 2021, so Vic would have been about 87, I think, at this point. They were getting ready to leave their house on College Avenue to move to Greencroft. And he wanted to fix up and make sure the house was in good shape before they left it. And so he was painting the gable on the garage. And I got a phone call probably from, I think Tina was in town too.
Was visiting.
But Tina and Marie were both talking about this. And they wanted to stop his painting the gable, but they were hesitant and they thought, well, let's bring Kevin in. Maybe he can help assess, is there a risk here or not? So I drove over and so I observed several things. One, he had the ladder at a pretty good angle, but it almost was too much. And so I thought there could be a little bit of a risk of it sliding down. But I also noticed that he was almost done. And I knew he really likes doing these projects independently. So I suggested to Tina that we adjusted the tilt a little bit on the ladder. And I said, why don't you just stand here at the base to make sure it doesn't slip out and let him finish the painting. And you were agreeable to that. It also, well, go ahead on that one. It's connected to another thing that I've finished. Go ahead. Well, they had a wood burning stove at that house also. And so every year he wanted to go up on the roof and clean the chimney out, sweep the chimney so the creosote doesn't build up. And of course, that's a very important safety thing to do if you have a wood burning stove. Well, over the years, Marie sometimes asked him, do you need to go up there on the roof and do that? And for quite a few years, he continued doing it. But fortunately, their grandchildren started coming to Goshen College. And so he would start giving them the job of going up there and doing the chimney sweeping. And that was one that you guys identified yourselves. And I really admired that solution for, you don't have to clean the gutters every year yourself. You can hire people to do that. Now my wife's already telling me to do stuff like that.
Just a bit of a comment on the ladder and the paintbrush and that. That started with visiting Tina. And she noticed an expression on Marie's face that indicated that Marie was unhappy about something. And I'll let Marie talk about that.
Yes, I said, well, Dad's up on the ladder with,
Put the microphone up to you.
Dad's up on the ladder and I'm not sure he should be up that high and doing that by himself. And so that is what produced the phone call. I guess.
you kids talked about that first, but
We involved Kevin pretty fast because Vic admires
Kevin's ability to do things.
And so we called Kevin and Kevin said, well, check
This thing, and he always mentioned that already.
how is the ladder? How far out is it? And
Somebody standing.
at the bottom. And then we felt really good about all that. And Dad felt good about that too. But we had already brought him down and we said, Mom's scared. And so the girls talked
About that, and they brought Kevin into the conversation. So
that was very helpful. When you don't have sons, you don't have sons to help um, analyze the situation. We women can't always look at it well, and but sometimes we do need that that qualification as well.
Yeah, I would just say that we're glossing over the emotions of this a little bit. You have to imagine, I mean, this was all happening in real time with sisters in 3 different places, and one sister at the site saying, "Get off the ladder, Dad." And that didn't go down so well in the moment.
When I was given clear and decisive instructions to come down off the ladder before I was finished, I was not pleased. I don't remember saying very much, but Tina read the expression on my face and she went inside and said, "Dad's mad." So then, looking at it from Tina's point of view, she has 2 parents that are sort of exercised. One is frightened and the other one is mad. So that's when you need to have a Kevin around to help to resolve a situation. So I was very pleased to be able to finish the job. And I have since not engaged in any ladder climbing or painting. I'm ready to let that go. And now we want to hear some stories from the group here, because I know you have stories as good or better than the ones you've been hearing. So who's the courageous person who wants to put their hand up first?
Hey, Vic, I wondered if I could toss one story in from the internet first. I'm impressed. I'm pleased with Becky's comment about the parallel perpendicular arrangement between our families. But I would note that while you may have very good pickleball judgment on what not to lunge for, some of you may recall that my dad does not, and ended up with a dislocated shoulder and torn rotator cuff that required surgery, and eliminated his ability to make his 88th birthday ride on a bike, and he had to do it on a recumbent tricycle that year.
One of the issues that you didn't address are the last rites issues. What do you do for funerals? And our family, all of my children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren live within a 30-mile radius of this place. So when we move from one place to another here at Greencroft, all I have to do is put on an out in all points bulletin, and we get 20 people show up with 3 pickup trucks and a trailer, and they get the job done in a hurry. Previous to that, in my last pastorate, I had a job on the side because the congregation was too small to keep us going, and I was a grounds manager for a 95-acre cemetery. And I learned a few things about last rites and how people don't make decisions about that. So Helen and my way of handling that was to gather our 3 children and talk about these issues. We had decided that, or I had decided that we would go the route of cremation rather than open casket viewing and all of that kind of business. And I said that was one of the decisions that we were making. And our daughter said, you know, if your body isn't viewed by the grandchildren, they're not going to like that. So we talked with the people at Yoder Culp, and they have a system there, or a program where you can do the viewing, you rent a casket, and have a regular viewing kind of service, and then after that, the body is cremated. And that seemed to please our children and grandchildren, and that's the decision we made together.
Thank you. We had the same conversation and the same outcome in our house. Others?
You can keep your mic and then.
I want to, first of all, thank you folks for the transparency and the conversation. just to make an observation, tell a story, and ask a question. It sounds to me like you decided that it's better to die happy than to die safe. So I think that's good advice. Second, one thing that we did 10 years ago that I think we have felt really good about is at a family gathering, we sent the grandkids away, basically, and then all the children, spouses, and Winnie and I talked about what we had for our documents, and we went over everything in detail. And then we made available to everyone actually all those documents, including our will. One of the things that we sort of have worked at a little bit further has to do with power of attorney and power of medical attorney regarding understandings. We identified the key persons, having somebody in the medical profession, obviously settled that. We have someone for durable power of attorney. There was no question there. But I think what we clarified in a good way was our understanding and their understanding that when there were critical decisions that need to be made that involved those areas, they would talk together and as much as possible come to an understanding that they could all live with. We don't think that'll be a problem, but should there be a problem, it's clear who has authority to move that forward. The final question that I have is one we have not discussed in our family in any detail. There's been a little kidding about it, but we've not sort of intentionally discussed that. And that has to do with the matter of keys. When should parents stop driving? So I wondered if any of you have actually explicitly discussed that, and if you have criteria and metrics that are going to guide that decision.
We have not.
We've talked about it, but haven't really made any decision. I think it's unfortunate that there isn't some place or service that could evaluate this sort of thing. You know, when the time comes that I need to quit driving, I'm willing to accept that, but I'm not willing to accept a decision made by someone who has not even seen me drive. And so I think, I wish there'd be a test I could take. So far, it hasn't been a crisis, but I think at one time, Indiana had a requirement that after a certain age, you did have to take a driving test. And I think that's a good thing, but there's nothing like that now.
Well, I would
heard-
just,
I heard you have to take a test if your license runs out. I mean, if you don't renew it in time. Is that true? Just a written test?
Oh,
Yes.
Just a written test. I have experience.
But not a driving
On
test.
driving?
No.
That seems kind of silly to me.
Were you gonna say something?
sorry, are you talking to me?
Yeah, did you start talking?
Yeah, I would just say this is certainly something that we have talked about a bit, both within the siblings, but also with mom and dad, sort of like, how will we know when it's time? And I think one of the things that I've realized being the one living locally is perhaps what I need to do instead of me always being the one that drives mom to grocery stores is I need to ride with her and dad at times when they are driving because of the very reason dad said, just to get a better sense of their driving abilities.
Yeah. I would say that although we haven't had a lot of conversation about this across the generations, that is something that we do with intention too, is just be in the car, dad driving. And the transition to a more digital car, mom sort of opted out soon after that and said, this car is confusing. I'm just going to stop driving. Which I think everybody felt was a fine decision for her to take. I also am aware that there is a mechanism by which if a family member wants a license taken away can engage the Bureau of Motor Vehicles so that they make that intervention and not the family, and it stays anonymous through the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. So that can happen.
I'm on the Indiana DMV website right now. In fact, the program is called Driverability Program, and you can email or phone a request, just as has been described here.
I wanted to say one other thing in response to John, just quickly, that you're hearing some really beautiful examples of families who are spending time together, can go to a site and ask the grandchildren to step outside. I mean, that's beautiful when it can happen. And I would also say that this isn't something I'm real proud of, but our parents tried that with my sisters and I quite a while ago, and we were not really ready and did not give it the time that it deserved and the time that they had prepared for it. And so I would just say an option would be to write things out clearly. If your family is unable or unwilling to have that conversation in a timely way, write it all out and just make sure that it is sent to one person who knows where to find it, because it is a privilege to be able to have those conversations that are being described, but you don't always have that privilege.
And those conversations can happen by Zoom too, if it doesn't work to have them in person.
Yes.
Yeah, we do Zoom regularly with our kids. I was just going to say, one of the things I didn't say is that we have made arrangements of what to do in case of our death. And so that's all clear with our kids, I think. And if Karen or Lee disagree, I guess they can say so.
But we've also said that, like, I have ideas pretty down in black and white, what I would like for my memorial service. But I also say, don't follow this if you prefer not to.
Marge is raising.
Well, this, where you're going now, I'm hesitant to share because I think if it looks bad for me, and I'm wondering how you relate. All my life, I drove. My kids are deciding whether I can drive or not. They've taken away the weekly trip to Bern for church. They've taken away my Wednesday evening Bible studies at Union Center Church of the Brethren. They have come in and said, Dad, we are taking over the finances. For 70 years, I did that. How do you handle the emotional feelings of having other people tell you you cannot do what you are so used to doing? Lois goes with me to the doctor's office. John does by phone the finances. And I'm having put upon within myself that I finally tell people I'm not as good as I used to be. I'm not as good as I want to be, but I'm okay. How do you convince your children?
I think that's a good point. It's one thing to talk about it beforehand. It's another thing to experience it. And
I really
can feel for you, Don.
Marge has been back to the driving thing. I'll first start with a story about my mother. She always told the family that when we saw that it was time for her to stop driving, just tell her. And so there came a point where we thought that she should stop driving. But in Illinois, she could take a driver's test. Every year she had to take a driver's test to get her license, and she always passed it. And by the time she was 95, we really thought, well, and so when I talked to her, she'd say to me, oh, did I say that? And she just wasn't ready to give up. So this is the example that my children are using with me, because I'm nearly 95 and I'm still driving.
But Dan drives with me occasionally and he keeps his eye on my driving. And so I hope I do better than my mother. And if they tell me I have to stop, but I haven't decided it on my own, I will.
Driving is a big, big issue. And it's in this area where I'm aware of two examples. And in this case, I don't want to use names, but I think these two examples suffered from the two generations not taking enough time with each other. I think something this important ought to be discussed and then discussed again and back and forth so that both are really heard. In the two cases where it didn't turn out well, the younger generation got a bit jittery and suddenly the car just disappeared. And they said, oh, we found a buyer. Well, happy to find a buyer, but the big issue is whether that car should have been sold or not. So I think maybe that was the right decision. I'm not going to make that judgment, but I think those things are so sensitive that both generations need some time to adjust on that one.
Mhm.
Yes, and not wanting to push the automobile thing too far, but I have the benefit of having a father that lived to be little 12 years older than I am now. So, he found he was of good mind and was a very good driver, but my brother was in charge of, back in Ohio, of keeping an eye on him because he used to drive to Kidron almost every day to work at the self-help store down there. And that Kidron Road is a dangerous road with hills in it, and it's very narrow. And so my brother would occasionally want to ride with him, and he was keeping tabs on my father. And he was encouraging him that maybe you better realize that this is not the time to be driving anymore. My father agreed with him that he would, at a certain point, I'll give up the keys willingly. What it took was a fender bender. And the next day, my brother had the keys. My father just gave them to him, and that was the end of it.
How old was he at that time?
He was probably 96 or 97. Now,
It's just a fender bender.
you hope it's only a fender bender because there are stories where it's a tragic situation where an elderly driver gets involved in an accident and people are seriously injured or killed. I think one of the things that I've observed in aging is that each generation is different than the previous generation. My father and mother never talked to their parents about driving cars. It was a new thing to my dad to not to be able to make a decision like that. He was orphaned at age 8, all of his siblings, and they were distributed to relatives to be raised. And at 18 years old, he was on his own. He was used to taking care of himself forever. My generation, my children, we've had that discussion already about cars and stuff. And I would hope that I am able to realize when I need to quit. But I've got a son here who periodically we ride together, and he's observing me driving. And so our arrangement is he's in charge of my health care, and my car is part of that because it's just the way it is. And so it's tough. I don't think it's as tough for women to give up driving as it is for men, is it? Okay, I'm going to leave.
I don't know that it will be any easier for me than Bill, but driving is a little like riding my bike. The less I rode my bike, the more I got concerned about what was going to happen. And it's the same way with the car. I don't want to drive in any cities anymore. I mostly drive here in Goshen, which means I'm losing some of that ability, but I guess that's a decision I've made.
One thing to be aware of is when you give up your keys, like Don is talking about, like my dad gave up his keys, was that you no longer have a way to get anywhere. Couples, you still have the other person who can take you. But if you're single, who's going to take you to those meetings that you want to go to? Who's going to, and you get tired of asking for rides all the time. Somebody's on that committee, they know you don't drive. Can't they ask you? That was one of the biggest things that my dad had problems with after he gave up driving, was how to get to places that he wanted to go without having to ask, beg, or whatever. So be aware of people when they stop driving, if they're a single person, Dawn or whatever, that offering them rides to places.
And I think that that is something that the next generation can turn their attention to, that it's not just about the car and the keys. For some people, driving is symbolic of autonomy, and for some people, it is a real agent of autonomy and ability to navigate the world. So if driving your own car becomes an unacceptable risk, how can the next generation preserve that autonomy in other ways? To have that conversation about the richness of life and autonomy and desires and wishes. There are other solutions than self-driving, perhaps.
It's a little hard to bring this to an end because there seems to be a lot of interest to contribute, to listen, and the like. But I'd like to give the last word to my oldest daughter, Tina. And when we were discussing this discussion, she said, well, remember, Dad, that all that I offered was offered in love. And I believe that there was no ulterior motive. The motive was to do something loving for the older generation. And that's a gift. So let's think of that as an ideal, as well as the other ideals we've looked at. I thank you so much, everyone that contributed. I think this has been a valuable discussion. I've never heard a discussion like this in a Sunday school class. I've never heard a sermon about it, but I think that it is real for these two generations. Thank you so much.